Hello and good morning, good afternoon. Welcome, Ursula, Gina. We should have a few more people join us. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. And you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
Ursula, where are you located?
I'm in the UK.
Well, excellent. Well, welcome.
Hello.
Let's see, let me get everybody on. Gina, hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing well. Where are you at, Gina?
I'm in Bakersfield, California.
Bakersfield?
Yes.
All right. I've driven through it a few times. I was born out in Oakland.
Oh, okay. I was born out in San Jose.
Okay. Yeah, right there. Very cool. Everybody else, guys, if you got a camera, feel free to pop on, and we'll kind of seeing where everybody's at right now, and then we'll get started. I do want to, because I know we've had Karen, hello, welcome back. Marcelo, Christy, good to have you guys on. So if this is your first time joining, then welcome. This is, these daily performance calls are here to help you. As we go through, I go over a number of different topics. If you've got a topic that you want addressed, do me a favor, send me an email, and my email's up on there. It's andrew@blakenewbar.com. But we talk about, last week we talked about selecting your niche. We talked about the success equation. We've talked about all sorts of different things. I want to talk about learning today for a couple of different reasons. And let's see, where's everybody? So the way we do these, though, if you, again, hop on camera with us, if it's not crazy where you're at, then feel free to take yourself off of mute. I do them kind of round table. So if you have a question, raise your hand, throw out a thought, participate as much as possible. I will be going over, a topic, and I've got things that I want to share, and I've got some slides that I want to go over with you. I want to talk about certain principles, and I will freely admit, guys, that I am using principles that I have learned from books, from speakers, and from other sources, and then I take them and I kind of give you my interpretation of. I am not taking full credit for any of these ideas because that's just weird. Success is success. I've talked about this before. We've got some of you guys have joined us from Bob Proctor, and he's absolutely amazing. Been doing this for a long, long time. But a lot of his stuff came from guys like Zig Ziglar or Peter Drucker or, Covey or many others throughout the last, 100 years. And plus, right? I mean, when we boil it down, we can go all the way back to, individuals like Christ and Confucius and other religious leaders who have given us some pretty good success principles to live by as well. So we're going over all of that. All right. So on that note, I got a few of you that aren't on video, and that's okay. So if anybody, one last thing, just kind of as point of order, if you haven't had a chance to connect with your accountability rep, do me a favor, just drop a comment privately in there for me and let me know so we can work to get you there. All right. Everybody have a good weekend. Everybody still alive. Nobody blew up with any craziness from social media or MMA or the boxing world or baseball or football or anything. Everybody's all right, living the dream. All right, good. Let's talk. All right, so I wanted to talk about learning, and there are principles. How many of you guys have read this book? I'm not diving deep into how he talks about it, but how many guys have read Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker? No? One of you? Okay. Let's get to it. Okay, you need it. Is this one of the ones I have on my list? It is, right?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Well, if you haven't yet, start with the two that I talk about to begin with, right? Big Leap or Cash Flow Quadrant. Once you're past that, this is a great book. So in there, if you, in there, he talks about your blueprint that we have growing up, right? And who we become, how we become who we are. And that's kind of what I want to talk about, because a big part of changing your mindset is understanding where a lot of that came from, where the foundations that come from. There is a link. I'm going to see if I can find this as I'm talking to you guys. So I want you guys, as I'm looking up the link for this on YouTube, there's a video I want you guys to watch. When we're done, where do you guys think your blueprint comes from? What does that mean? What does that phrase mean? What do you guys think? How do you become who you are now? And, let's all be courteous. So, whoever wants to start can start, and then we can kind of share from there. So please, what do you guys think?
I can chime in. I have heard that the blueprint, it kind of extends back. I up to 7 generations or more of
Can be.
who we've become today. I don't know much more about it than that, but.
Okay. Yeah, it can go back generations. Absolutely. Because you start to learn, parents teach their kids, parents teach their kids, parents teach their kids. So yeah, it can go back generations. Absolutely. Think about it, all of those generations that you have. And how many times have we heard that phrase? Like, I'm the first one to go to college, or I'm breaking out of this mold or that mold. Karen, feel free, unmute yourself and hop on. You're muted.
I have
What else?
I have a feeling that it, for myself anyway, that it may extend for thousands of years because of, just the subtlety of the electromagnetic field and that whole level of our being.
Yeah, it can go back. Everybody's a little bit different, but hold on, guys. Sorry,
Rarely
I'm
can
trying to
help.
get this YouTube link. There we go. All right.
I think in terms of our lives today, I think our blueprint is very much a result of our programming when we were children, in terms of what we learn from our parents, our teachers, everybody around us.
Sorry, this is on me. Hold on, guys. Just a second. I'm trying. I was trying to get that link and it wouldn't. YouTube wasn't agreeing with me. So say that again. Sorry. Apologies.
I just said that in terms of our lives now, rather than going back generations, what is a very what impacts on our blueprint is our upbringing. The people who influenced us when we were very, very young, when our brains are basically like sponges, everything just goes in. We don't have the ability when we're very young to accept or reject certain things. We just absorb everything, and that programming just tends to go into our subconscious. And I think that's
it
what
does. How many of you guys along those lines? Yeah, and thank you, Karen. I apologize. I started talking over you. How many of you guys have heard that it's essentially from 0 to 7 almost? Your brain is so sponge-like, and it's almost like you're going through a dreamlike subconscious or hypnotic state when it comes to learning, right? It's so intense, and things are being created at that point, right? So who we become, and we can get into, and at one point, one of these calls, I'll get into kind of the neurological, actually the physical aspects of how our nerves work, the insulation coating that's on there. And when you're trying to relearn something, why it's not, we've heard over and over again that it takes 21 days to create a new habit. And that really just came up from somebody that wrote an article at one point, and it just kind of was propagated throughout everywhere, when really the studies go back even further than that, into like the 50s, and they showed it's really anywhere between 18 to 66 days or something on average. Everybody's a little bit different. So a lot of people that think, hey, 21 days, I'm good, I'm set. You may be one of those people that's wired for a 52-day type of transition. But it's because we're not just trying to learn something new, we're trying to rework all of those nerve endings, right? And so you're breaking down that insulation, you're having to redo it, and all of that. So there's actual work that's going on inside our brain in order to change things. I've heard, and this is something that Brendan Burchard said this, and it's just kind of stuck with. So there's really 2 big ways that you change the way that you think, or you change behaviors, right? There's 2 real key ways. And the first way is some traumatic, some kind of experience that just takes you and, oh my gosh, what happened, right? You get in a car accident and all of a sudden you're scared to drive on a certain road, or you're scared to drive at a certain time of night. Or you're in it and now with, your seatbelt, someone's in a motorcycle accident, they're not wearing their helmet. From then on, they wear their helmet, right? Someone that is close to you passes away because of health choices, and all of a sudden you never touch a drink or a cigarette again, right? It's that type of thing. So something traumatic can happen, right? And it's almost a form of PTSD that causes that transition. And the other method of transitioning, the way that you think, the way that you behave, and what's going on, is a constant and consistent flow of new information, because you have to, before you can learn something new, you have to unlearn something that you've already learned. Does that make sense for everybody? Does that process okay. So how many of you guys have heard of, there's a couple of different books that talk about this, and I thought it was super interesting when I got into the blueprints. I was looking at this, the zones of learning. How many of you guys have heard of that at all? Mm-hmm. No?
Yeah.
Some? Okay. Let me pop on here, and I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to give you some slides. If you want to take notes, that's great. But again, I do want your guys' participation here, comment back and forth with me. So I put these together. So it's just kind of real simple when we learn how it started and how it all goes, right? So there's 3 key zones. And I didn't finish and make these super professional, guys. So you can jot these down, right? So it's interesting. If you look up zones of learning, there's a couple of different things that'll pop up, right? There's a couple of different articles. There's different books. Now, this comfort, stretch, and panic, if you pull up, I think I've got it here. This is what I thought was so funny. When I talk about, I fully give credit to someone else, but if you look up zones of learning and you look at the images, you get all of these different things. And every single one of them is trying to take credit for themselves, right? You talk about a little bit of plagiarism, like one person, and they'll rename it. So like instead of panic zone, some of them are like, oh, that's a danger zone, right? So like over here, that's the danger zone. The learning zone is the growth zone. So everybody calls it whatever you want to call it, guys. Now, how many people, if you were to look at a group of people 100%, how many people do you think kind of live their lives in that comfort zone as a percentage?
Majority.
The majority, 90%. Yeah, I'd say a lot of people kind of sit there. Now, let me ask you, I always think that's kind of a funny way of looking at it. How many people living in the comfort zone are comfortable?
No one.
Why is it called that? What do you guys think?
Well, they're not pushing
I
themselves
want to
beyond
break
their
down.
comfort zone.
I want you guys to take some of these principles that we take, and I want you to get deeper, right? Because here's the thing: personal development, guys. Why a lot of people struggle with real personal development, why a lot of people struggle getting to success. And if you missed last week's call on the success equation, it's a good one. Get with your accountability rep, get that recording. One of the reasons a lot of people struggle with personal development, and maybe you've done this for a while, maybe you've been doing it for years, and you've never actually gotten anywhere, is because to get to the people like the warm fuzzy feelings that they get when they get on some of these calls, right? Or they're reading a book, or they're listening to, motivation. They like those feelings. But if you're really looking to change who you are and go through these zones of learning, and you're looking to kind of live that success equation for yourself, if you want to truly change, then you need to go down a little deeper. And that first level is going to be a bit emotional, and it's going to take a level of self-awareness that most of us aren't willing to do. It's going to take looking into the mirror and saying, hey, you got to change. Maybe there were some issues. Karen, you're talking about thousands of years, 7 generations, just your parents, just yourself, whatever it is. Well, you've got to look at where you came from. You got to look at the choices you then made. You've got to identify them. You've got to deal with those emotions, understand what they really are. And now we've got to start to relearn how to become better, right? So when I, engage in these calls as much as possible, guys. So why is it called the comfort zone? And why do so many people live there when the reality is most people aren't comfortable? Because if you were to go talk with 100 people right now, almost every single one of them, if they're being honest, would say they would change something significant about their life. Why are people stuck there?
They're terrified to change.
They don't like to change. What were you saying, Karen? Was that you?
They're afraid. It's a fear to move out of that zone.
Yeah, they're afraid. Anybody else?
Habit and
It's
routine.
easy to settle.
Easy to settle. Paul, what were you saying?
Habit and routine.
Habit and routine. Yeah, our brains look for the easiest way to accomplish anything, right? When you set a goal, right? So if you set a goal, if you're one of those people that says, I'm going to do the best that I can, you will fail 99% of the time. The best that you can means that you're automatically giving yourself a way out, because when you're done, you'll go, I really tried. I gave it the best that I could, right? But the reality, or if we say, I just want a better life, your subconscious is going to look for the easiest way to just find something a little bit better. So people live in this comfort zone, and I call it, I think it's more just a complacency zone, where people are they're stuck. It's that habit. It's the routine. And I don't have to rock the boat, as it were. So most people do end up living there. Now, the next one that's on there is called stretch, right? So learning, growth, stretch. If we were to say, let's say instead of 90%, let's say 70% are in the comfort, you get about 20% in the stretch zone. what's the difference in actions, maybe daily and everything else, and why is the stretch zone important if you're really looking to change who you are? Matthew, join me. Give me some of your insights.
Sorry, man. Yeah, so in my opinion, stretch is one thing that starts to happen when you begin to stretch is you stop looking at your current circumstances as the only source of information and truth. So you're looking to grow. You have some leverage, and usually that leverage starts off with, fuck, this is so painful. I can't sit here anymore. I need to do something, and I'm not willing not to do anything. So usually pain is the impulse kind of leverage, but it's short-lived because it's pain will start to subside, and then guess what? You want to go drink again, or pick up another smoke,
or you get used to that pain enough and dealing with it enough, and then you justify dealing with that pain because of whatever. And each one of us has
I think what starts to happen is all those, like, the way I look at it is when we're in habit, we're kind of on an autopilot. So there's all these thoughts, rules, beliefs, vehicles that we use to get different things satisfied. And if we're just living in that zone, we're actually not really thinking a lot. We're really just like looking at what's around us as evidence of what's possible. Right. So the, in stretching, you start to break out of that. There's enough leverage that you want to grow past where you are now.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. Genevieve, our resident individual, she's going to be doing some coaching, but one of the big things that she does is also there's some yoga and physical and other things in there too, right? Am I correct? Yes.
Yeah. My current business is, I call it like a whole fitness business. Okay. It's a membership that incorporates fitness, yoga, nutrition, and mindset.
So when you're looking at that stretch zone, whether it's physically or whatever, why is that so important if we're looking at developing, maybe even physically? Look at it from that perspective. Why is stretching or pushing yourself in that regard so important?
I think it's important because we're creating new adaptations. So when we actually take the actions to better ourselves, where from a physical standpoint, we are creating on the cellular level new adaptations, new stresses that the body has to adjust to. And the only way to do that is through doing something different than what we've already done.
Right. So everybody's heard that analogy, right? If you're going to build up a muscle, what has to happen to that muscle tissue, the muscle fibers, right? If a muscle is going to grow, you stretch it to the point that you're essentially breaking that muscle fiber down, and it's got to regrow itself stronger, right? So that it can handle more, a larger capacity, a greater load than you were putting on it before, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, your business, all of these things. The only way to get into that next level is through this stretch zone. So then what would be an explanation for in here, the panic, the danger zone? What would be an explanation here, guys? And why is this important?
I think it's stepping off the cliff and going through your feelings of being completely annihilated. That book, The Big Leap, stepping into your genius. When you don't have a path in front of you, it appears when you take the step.
Yeah. Now, this is the difference, guys, between stretch and panic. It's a very fine line, and if you move too far into that panic zone, it can be detrimental. This is where you're increasing too much stress, because stress in a positive way leads to growth. Too much stress, and we can talk about it from that physical perspective, right? Too much stress leads to higher cortisol levels, which leads to all sorts of other issues with health, right? If we try to go too far beyond what we're capable of on our own, that's when injury can occur. Same thing emotionally, same thing spiritually, same thing with your business, right? So like when I was starting out my coaching business or my marketing business, I wasn't going to take on a client that I knew I wasn't going to be able to handle, right? I'm not going to step too far beyond that. And when I did have conversations with those types of clients, what do? If you're in that situation where you're stretching, you're doing everything you can, and now I've got an opportunity to do a little bit more, what would be the logical step that you would take? If you're thinking like an entrepreneur, I'm here, I've got an opportunity to do X. but my capacity to do so is limited right now. How am I going to fill that gap?
Get a mentor.
What would I do? Get a mentor, right? Get some help, get some assistance from somewhere, do a joint venture, something along those lines. Find a way to leverage somebody else's expertise, time, skills, money, whatever, right? We talked about that with the success equation. All of those things have to be paid in order to get to that end. And if I can't do it, I'm going to find somebody else that can, right? But so living, though, in that stretch zone never becomes comfortable, but can become a part of your life to live in, and life really opens up when you're there, as opposed to living in that level of comfort or being complacent, right? So here's a different way of looking at the zones of learning that I want to share with you guys. This is one of the other ones, and you guys can look these up if you want. Again, it's I'm not creating these for myself, but a different way of looking at our zones. So zone 1 would be, this is totally different, right? Totally different. So we're kind of past that first one. Now we're looking at 3 different zones. Someone else explained this principle in a different way. The first one would be exploring. So this is that first one. This is almost moving out of that comfort zone. We're starting something new for the first time. Learn to ride a bike. So all of these things are exploratory. You're starting your business online for the very first time. You're trying to figure out your niche. You're trying to figure out your avatar. How do I figure out my target demographic? What do I do the first time I'm launching an ad campaign? I'm holding a closing call for the first time. Any of these things. Becoming a parent for the first time. I'm going into workout for the first time. Learn to ride a bike, starting exercise, starting a new business. All of these things would be part of your exploring phase, right? The first zone, exploring. Once you've gotten past that exploring and we put in a little time and effort, now we're here into number 2 is going to be perfecting. So this is, I've started to work out and now I can lift heavier and heavier weights. I can, my stretching is better. My cardio is better. I'm starting to learn something. And so my presentation, I can deliver because I've practiced those basics and I'm not freaked out about it, right? I've gone through the exploring phase. I've decided on a course of action and now I'm perfecting that course. And I'm able to handle more and more and more as my course load grows. Basic principle makes sense? Yeah. And then it gets to maintaining. So maintaining, how many of you guys speak more than are bilingual or multilingual? Anybody? Ursula?
I am.
Yeah.
Aaron? Hobby? What languages do you guys speak?
I speak a few languages. Actually, languages are one of my passions. So about 7.
Oh my word.
About 7.
Yeah.
Okay, lazy, whatever. Very cool. All right. Well, then, perfect. You're learning a new language, right? Once you've got the basics down. Now, language, especially if it's like one of the Latin languages, a lot of them are fairly simple, right?
Yeah.
So like I learned Portuguese first. Spanish was fairly easy considering I had learned how to speak Portuguese, right? Not that it's easy to begin with, but much easier once I have a foundation. Once you've taught yourself to speak more than one language, each one that you learn now, would you say it's the process at least? Is it different than the first time you learned another language?
In a way, I mean, some of the languages that I speak, I started learning when I was very young, or some of them I don't even remember learning, but I'm currently learning Mandarin. And because I'm learning on my own with the computer, it's pretty different. But yeah, the more languages you learn, the easier it gets, because you have a system in your mind now where you can make associations with words and sounds and tones. So it's just like a brand new world that you're building. And once you get over like the basics, then it just keeps on building and building after that.
So you develop a process, but then one of the easiest ways or one of the best reasons that you're able to do this now is your brain has become more elastic. It's gotten used to a process, and you put it through that process over and over again. You've learned something, and now you're just saying, hey, we're going to do it again. And your brain says, okay, it's time for one more. And it starts to connect those neurons. So the thing is, though, like a language, you learn it, you're exploring at the beginning, and then you begin to perfect, and you perfect that language through practice, through speaking, through reading, through immersion. Maybe you go to a location and you're constantly listening to it. There's a big difference. So nowhere near as impressive as Hobby, but you know, a quick story. So like I learned how to speak Portuguese, and then I went to Brazil, and I was there as a missionary, and I'm not getting into any kind of theological discussion right now, just so you understand the principle. So I learned how to speak here in the States for about a month, and then about a month in Sao Paulo, and then I went to Rio de Janeiro down in Brazil. And as we're going around as a missionary, you go door to door, you share a message, right? Well, in my limited language skills, as I was perfecting my language, the word for message is mensagem, and the word for massage is massaging. And I knocked on a door, and a woman answered, and her family was obviously in the background. And so very excited that they had come to the door. I said, we're excited to be here. We're super excited to share something with you that we think you'll love. It'll take about 30 minutes or so. Would you let us come in and give you a massage? She kind of looked at me for a minute, and she said, what? And I said, we've got a great massage for you. We think you will absolutely love it. Your neighbors have loved it. We'd love to give you a massage. And she said, are you sure? I said, yes, absolutely. And so she said, okay. And then her husband came to the door, and he says, what's going on? And I said, we'd like to give, we were talking with your wife here, and she said she'd like a massage, and we'd love to give one to the whole family. And he kind of looked at me, and then after a minute, the individual that was with me, who had been in country for much, much longer and spoke the language better, decided to step in before things got out of hand. And I was beat to a pulp on the guy's door. So immersing yourself in the language is much different than, just listening to it, just reading it, right? Just like any skill, just like you guys starting your sales funnels, or starting your advertising, or getting into personal development, or generating a different relationship with finances, or any of these things. It doesn't, just reading is one thing, but you have to take action on the things that you learn in order for them to become, part of you. So this goes from the exploring to the perfecting. And then if you let it go and you stop practicing, the reality is, guys, your brain doesn't truly forget. Our memories are created, and our brains don't remember things the way a computer does. So I can't pull it up exactly the same way. Our brain remembers what? It remembers, thoughts that we had during that time. It remembers sounds. It remembers smells. It remembers the actions. It remembers all of these different things. And our brain tries to put all of this together to form a memory. And every time you bring it up, it modifies it just that little bit. Anytime I tell a story, it modifies that memory just that little bit. If I want to maintain a skill, then I've got to practice it over and over. Hobby, any of you guys that speak another language, I still speak Portuguese. I've been doing it for 20 years. My ex was Brazilian. I spent years speaking it. It's nowhere near what it was 10 years ago. I've got to continue to practice. Your personal development, your business, the things that you need in order to succeed, you have to keep practicing them. Even once you reach a level of capability and your confidence is now there, you've got to continue that. Does that make sense for everybody? So this is kind of a chart of that. So you guys so this is after we get past the maintaining. I'm sorry, this doesn't look great. So at the beginning, you may not be any good. You kind of suck at what you're doing. You're learning a lot during that time. And then the better you get, the less you learn each time you do it. But now we're maintaining, we're perfecting, and we're developing. So you may not be learning new things. So eventually this zone 3, this maintenance zone, starts to get into our comfort zone.
Yeah.
Right? The things that you do now, you'll get in there. And if you want to stretch again, you need to start that process all over, right? Living in that stretch zone is important for personal development and getting where you're looking to go. Thoughts? Anybody want to share any ideas? No? Here's what I want you to do. So a little bit of homework. It's a short video. It's only a few minutes long. They've got a longer version. That is by the Royal Royal Foundation of Education. It's something like that. Some out of the UK, and it's an animated thing. It's absolutely fantastic. But it talks about the paradigm of learning and how we all learn. It talks about how messed up the education system is as a whole, because it's the whole. Have you guys seen that cartoon where someone is teaching a bunch of animals something, and they're trying to get the elephant to climb the tree, and they're trying to get the monkey to swim, and they're trying to get, you know, because everybody's there and we got to teach everybody these same principles. And then they're each being graded on this overall general thing. Many of you guys, you may be at a different place, especially if you've gone through some of Proctor's stuff and you've spent time over the last few years doing your own personal development. You've got to understand that you're going to learn in a different way. You've got to understand what that learning style is. Now, these basic things that we talked about, the zones of learning, the steps of learning, whether you're talking about comfort and stretch and panic, or you're talking about, you know, exploring and perfecting and maintaining, whichever way you want to look at it, each one of you that's here is going to learn a little bit differently, right? One reason I love that video is because they're talking about education, but they're doing it in a way that is both visual, it is audio, and there are things to read. So it kind of hits all of these different points for people depending on how you like to learn. But take that and, you know, think about your kids, but think about yourself. Think about where you are and how you learn. And the more self-aware you are in this regard, the more successful you will be long-term if you're honest with yourself in what you do, right? Okay, so everybody watch that. Keep reading. Anybody have any questions over kind of this principle? I mean, that's what I want you guys to think about is it's important to learn. There's different ways of doing it. The bottom line is, though, you need to get into that stretch zone as much as possible and push yourself to grow. And every once in a while, step a little bit into that danger zone, into that panic zone. That's where incredible leverage is necessary. But then find ways to plug those gaps, because then that becomes your stretch zone and you just keep pushing that further along. And that's when you achieve some tremendous things. I mentioned it on one of the calls before, and we'll talk about it again. But guys, it's easier to 10x your results than it is just to double them. And I'm going to talk about it towards the end of this week, that principle. But Karen had something, and then Matthew, I think you were starting. Karen, you had a question or a comment?
Mine was just a question. When we've had a Zoom call and you put links up on chat, once you close the Zoom call, is there any way we can get back into that to see what the links are?
If you get with your if you message me, I can send you the link. If you're looking for this one, you can.
This one I've got. I've actually sort of gone into it whilst we've been talking, but previous ones, I went in to get the links, and I couldn't find any way of getting back onto that chat once we closed the meeting.
Email me and ask which one you're looking for. Okay. Andrew@blakenewbar.com. Okay, Matthew, you had something, and then Christy.
Oh, I was just going to say, I like the way that, Bob talks about that panic zone, that once you understand what's really going on there, that there's like the, in your subconscious mind, there's the kind of familiar, the way that you're used to perceiving or seeing the world. And you've got this new idea that's come in, and the two frequencies of each are kind of in conflict, right? So you can hit what he calls a terror barrier and just freak out, drop everything, go right back, to your previous comfort conditioning, or you can realize that it's just the kind of the two in conflict and proceed regardless.
Yeah, there is that level. So that's one of the reasons. So have you started reading The Big Leap yet, Matthew?
Oh, I love that book. Thank you for that recommendation. I hadn't read that yet, and it's brilliant. Really awesome. Fantastic. Yeah.
So within The Big Leap, if you guys are, and I talk about the two different ones, you should either be reading Cash Flow or Big Leap. If you're reading The Big Leap, one of the things it talks about is kind of stretching into that upper limit, and you knock against it. So I read this first time a few years ago. Now, anytime I get to where like I'm pushing and I'm starting, I'm launching new ads, I'm putting together a new course, we're bringing on X amount of clients, something's there, and then I have a super lazy weekend, or I have a frustrating conversation with my fiance that has nothing to do with anything, or something happens, and I've gotten to the point where we stop and I go, okay, there's something's happening, right? I'm at an upper limit. What's going on? What's about to transpire? What could transpire? If I push through, what's the next level? Like, you start to recognize those moments for what they are, and the opportunity that's right around the corner if you're willing to push through. So, yeah, living in that stretch zone and the panic zone and all of that becomes important. There's a lot of different ways to look at it depending on what you happen to be studying at the time. But okay, Christy, last one. We'll kind of wrap up. Hopefully, all you guys watch that video, please. But Christy, go ahead.
Andrew, this is my first call, and I wanted to get your email and then also the name of that video for our homework.
Okay, yeah. So it's my email is andrew@blakenewbar.com.
Okay.
And then I put the link in the chat. But if you look up, if you just look up education paradigm animate.
Okay.
Instead of animation, animate on YouTube. It's a video from the Royal. Did somebody pull it up? Paul, did you pull it up there?
Yeah.
What's the name? What's the name on the video?
RSA Animate.
RSA. So it's like Royal Society of Academics or something like that. RSA Animate, and it's the education paradigm.
Changing education paradigms.
There you go. Thank you. Changing education paradigms. But it's a great video. Think about that. And then especially if you have kids, it's great, but look at your own education and what you need to do to change. So on that note, guys, hope you got a little bit out of it. Think about your zones. Think about where you're at. Think about where you're spending most of your time, what you need to do to stretch, to get into it, to deal with everything going on around you. Find a way to lift yourself up, to rise from the ashes, to fly like the phoenix, to get things going. Maybe tomorrow I'll tell you guys why I say that at the end of every call. And then we'll rock and roll. So if you haven't yet, message me, email me, let me know if you're having issues getting a hold of your accountability rep. Get on those calls. Matthew and a couple of you guys should be close to your business plan call. Matthew, let them know that we want to.
Yeah, I got 2 calls today.
You've had 2 calls?
No, 2. I'm booked with Paul, and then I'm booked with the tax business specialist today.
Okay. Talk with Paul. Tell him I want to fast track you to the business plan call.
Okay.
And get you there. And then we'll rock and roll with you guys. So appreciate everybody being on. Join me tomorrow. We'll talk then. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.